Awesome. So, welcome everybody. Shayla and I have spoken to many of you and said that we were going to bring on the beautiful Becca
Yep.
for a bunch of emotional self care, things like that. And so, guess what? We got her.
We had to join her idea of a class though.
Yeah, so she actually came up with this series. She has really been focusing with her clients with self care. And we've been really realizing that people don't have like a true definition of self care. They think it's more like just the bubble baths, things like that. And so, thank you, Becca, for doing all this for us. You're so wonderful.
Oh,
And I'm going to hand it right on over to her.
thanks. Well, thanks for doing this with me. It was a little bit my idea. It is probably becoming now my favorite topic to talk about. And us girls in our chat time were talking about how it is not just all bubble baths. There's a lot more to it. So this will be a series where we will have 5 total classes. This is just the first in the series. So I really recommend tuning into all of them. Because we're going to kind of cover the different, all of the different aspects of self-care. So I think we should start off this first one with covering, it's self-love, right? Like loving yourself through the holidays. So self-care would be one piece of self-love. So I correct myself there. So we're going to talk really about self-love and all of the different pieces there. I do think we should kind of start off with this first session. Let's talk about the self-care piece, because I do feel like when it comes to self-love, you have to have that self-care piece kind of in place. I think it's helpful to have that in place first before you go tackle some of the more challenging pieces of this self-love puzzle, right? I recommend someone starting off with self-discipline, for example, or the self-boundaries. Let's start off with just this around self-care and that one piece of the puzzle. So I think we should just start off with that. And then we can kind of slide into, we had talked about covering self-talk as well today. But I think starting with that self-care piece, kind of the most important place to start. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like along those lines, what most people are considering, like April said, is like having some time to yourself, right? Bubble baths, treating yourself to ice cream or Starbucks, things like that. But I think that really fits into, are you actually loving yourself, or are you doing that from a different place?
To like stuff it or bury it down.
And to give yourself like a little, when you go shopping and you spend a ton of money, like, okay, so that does give you like your little hit of happiness, right? But is that really caring for yourself if later you're not going to be able to buy groceries, or, not be going to be able to pay your heating bill? That's really not like the loving thing to do for yourself.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I want to share with you guys something that I've been really going through. Is one of the things that I'm doing now in my life is asking if things bring me joy, right? Does this bring me happiness? And this summer, especially up in the mountains, and you know, um, I get a lot of people, a lot of clients, a lot of friends who talk to me about emotional eating. And, it comes down to the s'more. And it was like, okay, does this bring me joy? And I would say yes. But then later I was reflecting and going, is this bringing me emotional eating joy, like addiction? Or does it just taste really good? Right. And so I was kind of having this debate on which one is it? Is this more like emotional eating, or just purely on taste? And so I thought that was a very interesting perspective to look at, because yes, it brought me joy. S'mores are delicious. Sorry.
Yeah. No, and you don't have to be perfect all the time, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was delicious. But then, I'm looking at the time, I'm not really struggling with a lot of things, right? There's nothing that's emotionally hit me that I'm trying to stuff down or, replace with food. So at that point, just by reviewing that, I was like, I really like the taste of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between that instant pleasure, right? Like we want just that instant pleasure, and sometimes the treats can also bring us joy. I would like, my follow-up question to you would be, as you had this more, were you mindful while eating it? Were you stopping and really like savoring, like, wow, it's amazing how this melts, together, like really, really truly being in the moment and like savoring that, because you can eat in a mindful way and truly have that bring some joy, or you could eat in a way where it's just mindless and you down it and you're like, whoa, that happened so quickly, I barely tasted it, right? And so there's different, that would be my question to you, which I think I know the answer.
Oh yeah, of course. So it's all about the joy, right? Does this bring me joy? So for me, it was taking that bite and then just being like, oh my God, this is so good.
Yeah.
And knowing that I'll be in pain tomorrow, I understand the consequences when I do that, but sometimes it just brings me joy. But that's one of the things that is part of just my regular self-care, right? Is just looking at things like, I was just having this conversation the other day with a client where, if there's three things in the sink, right? Three dishes, and all of a sudden we come into like, oh, I feel obliged, right? I feel obliged to do these three dishes, but even though, and by the way, she was in a lot of pain. So she felt obliged to do the three dishes in the sink, where I was like, well, with your self-cares, maybe you should be resting, right? Who cares about the three dishes in the sink, right? Now, eventually it's going to pile up. Somebody's got to do the dishes, right? But with your self-care, this obligation that you have to do these dishes, because that's what you've been raised, right? You always have to do all the dishes. Or is it resting your body? Your body's screaming at you in pain. Maybe you should take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to also reflect, or will help you reflect on how you're utilizing these things, is how frequently you're doing them. Are you having ice cream once a month because you just love it and you are mindfully eating it and it's amazing and it's a treat? Or are you struggling to get through your day every day and then you get home and you're like, oh my God, I just can't wait to sit down with this carton of ice cream, and then you're doing it every day. And I think that really will help frame the way that you're using that. If you are using it as it's bringing you joy and you're doing like a little bit of splurging for yourself, or if you're using it to stuff things or get away from your emotions or just get your quick hit of serotonin for the day.
Well put, Shayla. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Question of like, does this bring me joy? I would ask myself, I'm kind of shifting into where April's at, and like, does this bring me joy? Does this make me happy? But one thing I picked up a couple years ago is, does it bring me value? Like, what value bring into my life to like help myself put it in perspective of if I was engaging in something that was just that instant pleasure, or if I was engaging in something that truly is bringing value to my life in some way, whether that be joy or happiness, or it's going to bring me something maybe later. Sometimes it doesn't bring us joy in the moment, but it brings us joy later, right? And so that was another question I just loved, which kind of is combining the self-care and self-talk, right? Is to get in the habit of asking yourself questions like these versus just sort of like floating through life and kind of getting kicked around.
And
like
that will depend on your individual goal, right? So for me, I'm asking, will it bring me peace all the time? That's my current big goal.
Yeah.
Okay. Or does it bring value? Or does it bring you joy? Or whatever your big goal is in mind, measure your stuff up against that.
Yeah.
So what are some other questions, ladies, that people could be asking themselves when they're working towards those goals of joy or peace or happiness or even contentment? Or what are some of the questions that they should be asking like on a daily basis?
Is this
First
what
of all, how to go ahead.
I was gonna say, is this what I want to be doing? Is this where I want to be? Is this who I want to be around? It's like you could go on and on with questions, but it's kind of getting in the habit of asking yourself questions like, am I living for everybody else or because I feel obligated, right? This has been a big topic for us to discuss lately. It's like, do I just feel obligated to be here and say yes? Like, if somebody calls me and says, I want to go to lunch and I'm just not feeling it, like I'm having an off week. One of the things I love about you ladies is I can be like, I don't feel like it. You're like, okay. Versus, there are some individuals of like, well, why don't you feel like it? Well, I don't want to talk about it. Well, what's going, they like kind of drill, or they take it personal. Like, why don't you want to hang out with me? Well, it's not that I don't want, like, it has nothing to do with you. I'm having an off week and I don't really want to go to lunch. Or maybe I've had a really busy week and that was my only downtime and I'm committed to my quiet me time, but kind of people take it personally. And then a lot of the times what I see happening, and I've definitely done this in the past, is I'll go because I don't want to say no and hurt this person's feelings. So now here I am in the middle of this lunch or event or whatever it is, and I didn't even really want to be here.
And then you can't enjoy it anyways.
And then you're not enjoying it anyways.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is reframing some questions too. And I did hear this interesting bit about affirmations versus like affirmations, which is really different, but it goes along the same lines as like the self-talk. But if you're talking to yourself, like asking, why am I so stupid? Why am I so tired all the time? Your mind will find reasons for that. And it will give you answers to that. That's what will come your way. If you're asking like, why am I so awesome? Like, why does everybody love me so much? Like, you will also find reasons for that. So if your main goal is like to bring joy into your life and you wake up every morning and you say, how can I fit joy into my life today? You'll have a lot easier time attracting that and fitting it in. So I think that's a different question to ask yourself, to really make that a priority in your head and to just fit a little bit in every day.
So Tamara wanted to say, sounds like self-care can also be how we receive feedback or answers from others.
Absolutely. I think we're going to touch on that a lot in boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I do want to talk about like some of the self-talk, how many times do we hear, oh, I'm crazy, or, oh, I'm fat, or, oh, when you're talking to somebody, ignore my cat back there, by the way, he's like, we're going to talk about self-care. So, we hear people just always downgrading themselves every day, right? And we think it's okay, right? There's a lot of people that do it in like a joking manner, and they're like, yeah, I know I'm fat, and things like that. And I really want to go ahead.
Or I was just gonna say, or like I'm an idiot.
Yeah. And we turn it into a joke. And in my opinion, anytime that somebody's joking like that, there's usually some self-belief of truth there. And so I know for me, like one of the things, I have a friend that's always saying, oh, do you think I'm crazy? Oh, that sounded crazy. Oh, I'm crazy. And I'm always like, just shut up. Like, no, you're not. Talk about how awesome you are for having this great idea, right? Or thinking outside the box, or just being different.
So my mom has a friend who I think has the best response to that. And she told me this because my mom tends to have the negative self-talk like this. And her coworker looked at her one day and she said, I really don't like when you talk to my friend that way. And that's how we would react to somebody else talking to her that way, right? So she kind of does the same thing when she's talking about herself. And she's like, you are my friend, and I don't like when you talk to her that way. Like, and I just loved that because that's what I would do if somebody was saying those things to you, right? I would be like, excuse me. Like, you can't talk to April that way. But like, if you're talking to yourself that way, why is that differently? Or, why is that handled differently?
What I like to do when I was really working on my self-talk was I talked to the people around me and said, sometimes we're not cognizant of it. We don't recognize that we're even doing it. And so asking all those people around you, hey, when I say this stuff, will you call me out on that, please? Like, I might get a little angry, but call me out on that, because then I start to become more self-aware of when I'm speaking to myself that way. And so like talking to, creating the support system and talking to those around you, like I'm very grateful to have you ladies, because the minute I start going down there, you ladies are just like, hey, April, like, this is not a good place for you to be in.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things I appreciate most about our relationships is that we can be honest and say, like call each other out basically on our nonsense, and maybe nonsense isn't the right word. We've been talking lately about programs, right? Like all these programs, beliefs, and this conditioning, and which is part of what we're going to get into in some of the other classes too. But it's like having the ability to call each other out, and like surrounding yourself with people that can be honest with you, and you can be honest with them, and there's not going to be hard feelings. We sort of have a joke that we say something between each other when we call each other out, right? We'll like make a joke about it, like, yeah, I know you called me out there and I'm not real happy about it, but I also love you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it on here because it wouldn't be appropriate, but
it may have some inappropriate.
I was waiting for you to say it.
Me too.
But it's like a loving, F you, and I love you too. Like, thank you. Like, I'm irritated because what you said was true, and it just called me out on my junk that I need to work on. But I also really appreciate that we can do that with each other, and like surround yourself with people that can do that with you, but also allow people to do that with you, like create that safe space together. Because you don't want somebody that is doing that to you and making you feel bad about yourself, and then not allowing you to do that with them. Like, it has to be this balanced.
And you have to know that they're coming from love. If it's not somebody that you're absolutely sure of that with, then they're not a good person. Because in our group, I guess we always know that it's coming with love, that we're not just trying to cut each other down, or we're in competition or whatever. We always know that whatever's being said is for our best good.
Yeah, so I wouldn't tell anybody around you who maybe you have like more of a malicious relationship, I guess. I can't think of the best word. But when you have that relationship with somebody where it's really not a true friendship, and there's a lot of like maybe competition or some angry negative emotions between you, I would really talk to those people that you can truly trust, like maybe like your partner, your closest friends, those people, because you don't want somebody outside that circle, like this associate friend that maybe, you guys are catty with each other. You don't want her to start bringing you down, right? And so calling you out in a more malicious manner and bringing you down. You want somebody who can literally just look at you and be like, hey, you're not an idiot, and I don't like hearing you say that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that has to do with the boundaries around your heart, right? Like who you're allowing access to actually give you that kind of feedback. So not walls around your heart, okay? Boundaries. So the appropriate people like can get in and connect with you in that way. But the people who shouldn't be afforded that courtesy and that privilege really are not afforded that. And it doesn't have to be even anything malicious or somebody that you have a relationship that's off with. If it feels off or you don't feel comfortable, even if it's been amazing so far, you don't have to share that with them, because like your intuition will know. So if it just feels a little bit off, just don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It also has to do with boundaries with yourself as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I sort of joke that the ego is like this other being that, kind of tags along with us, right? And we need it to appreciate the ego. We need it to navigate this world and this life. But one thing, and I try to speak very lovingly to my ego, because I almost see it kind of like a child, right? That's like a child, but a child that's protecting me and there to kind of help guide and protect me. But just like if one of my children said something to me, I'd be like, stop, it's not okay for you to speak to me that way. I do that with the ego as well. So I'll actually tell the ego, almost like I'm talking to this other being, like, stop, that is not okay. I'll call it out, but I'll also love it at the same time. And like, I really appreciate that you're trying to protect me in this situation. But this is not, this is not appropriate. So it's boundaries with yourself and what you allow to internally go on.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things, and I'm not at my office today, so I don't have my book with me. But one of the things I love is affirmations, like, Shayla was saying earlier. I wanted to share that when I was really doing a lot of my self-talk, I was a control freak, right? I mean, these ladies will tell you I like to be in control. And one of the things that I was really out of balance earlier in my life was having to be in control of situations that I have no control over. And so one of the resources I want to share with you guys that I don't have here is Louise Hay's books, where it has affirmations and things that you can self-talk yourself. One of the things that I see a lot of is people read it and they just repeat it in their head. They don't actually verbalize it. So I want to recommend, if you're doing any like affirmations, very like any of that type of self-talk, what I like to do is write it down on like little post-its, and I put it on mirrors. And every time you go like into your bathroom and look in the mirror, you verbalize, not in your head, but verbalize, looking yourself in the eye and saying, this, it took me 6 months. My affirmations, the only affirmation I worked on was, I will only focus on what I can control. And it took me 6 months to get that self-talk to really set into my mindset. So then when like something happened, I could say, what piece of this can control, or what can I control?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ladies happen to have one of Louise Hay's books
Yeah,
floating right there next to you.
I don't have
No.
it right here, but I would add, I do a dry erase marker on the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So I will write affirmations in a dry erase marker on the mirror as well. But yeah, no, I mean, I love it. And there's something about the spoken word that gives it more like oomph. It's your way of expressing yourself. There's more power there. You'll notice when you first start doing it, the first time you say it, you're like, I believe this, right? I love myself, whatever it is. And then the more you do it, and the more you do it, the more you do it, before you know it, you're like standing up straighter, right? You're leaning into it. You're saying it completely differently. You're starting to really like feel and own it. But it does take some work. It's not just like reading it once in your head and then like, boom, that's integrated. It would be really cool if it was that way, but it does take a little bit of work. Also writing it out. This might not be for everybody, but like for me, I retain things when I write them. So I will sometimes just like in my journal, write something, a couple of times, like not just one time, but do it repeatedly, or maybe at the top of every page to like remember, okay, as I'm writing it, I'm saying it, and sort of like using all of the
All of the tools, all of the
all
ways. Yeah. I think that that's super important. And some of these are really hard to integrate, actually. I hadn't had a lot of work with affirmations when I read a book. I think it's in the Not Nice book, actually, that I recommended to Becca. And it's about looking yourself in the mirror and saying, I love you, like looking yourself in the eye and saying that to yourself. And that was so hard for me. It like brought me to tears for like the first week. I just like hadn't experienced that really, and definitely not for myself. So I hadn't been like loving myself or had anybody just like that I felt just like loved me despite all of, my flaws or quirks, I guess is a better way to put it than flaws, because we're all just different and we're not everybody's cup of tea. Like nobody is. So that was like really, really hard for me. But it was probably one of the most powerful things that I had done for myself. So sometimes they're going to be difficult, especially if you're changing like a ton of programming. So I was 30 when I started doing that. That was 30 years of programming, and not loving myself that way.
And as we're working on those pieces, one of the things that I like to teach my clients is, so if you're really struggling with especially something very hard, right? You have these tiny little accomplishments within that goal, right? So each step, and sometimes just like, I just want to be like, good job. Like, good job. You made it through that, right? Congratulations. You're awesome. Good job. And I'm a real big firm believer in like, I guess rituals, or actually having movements with things. So like when you're telling yourself, like, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying I love you, but being like, I love you, right? And like having movement and some sort of action with it when you've accomplished those little goals. Say, good job.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And we're really just like scratching the surface with self-love. But we also thought it would be good to do it over the holiday season, because this can be a tough time for people. So like probably one of the biggest things I would want to get across is that, we're scratching the surface and this is a process. So it's kind of like you're rebuilding self-trust with yourself. You're rebuilding self-love with yourself. You're up against who knows how many years of society and maybe family, conditioning and programming that is all centered around teaching you that you're to love someone else first in order to receive love, which is completely backwards. How this got integrated into our society, I don't really want to go there, but to just kind of to like cut yourself some slack and a little break. And like, if you catch yourself in the next 24 hours, like pay attention to how you talk to yourself, pay attention to how you interact with others, or how you're receiving things from others. And if you catch yourself, instead of like beating yourself up or going into that like guilt or shame, which again can be really, really easy to do, just stopping and acknowledging that this is a process and I'm going to rebuild this trust and this self-love with myself, and look myself in the mirror every day like Shayla did, right? And say, I love you, until I truly believe it. Because the reality is, you can't receive love from others if you don't love yourself. You can't give love to others more than you love yourself. So the best gift you could actually give the world is to love yourself truly. And wherever you start with that, whether it's actually scheduling a bath, like I know it's not all bubble baths, but it's a good place to start. Of like, do you do something on a daily basis that's just for you? Do you have this self-talk going off and you're like not even really conscious of it because it's just been going off for who knows how many years, and it's just like really beating you down and making you not feel good about life? Or seeking that love out of everyone else around you, trying to please them and take care of them first in hopes that they'll love you, and that you'll maybe receive that someday, which you won't, because it has to come from you first. It's just, it's like we've been taught it backwards.
It's miraculous too, when you put yourself first and you really focus on that, how much more you really can help people if that's what you desire, or how much time you really have. And I've had this discussion with both of you ladies because I do have a lot on my plate right now. And I have put myself as like the top priority. And I take more time now than I probably ever have in my life to relax, to reset, to meditate, to take bubble baths, to meal prep, like all of the things that are actually caring for me. And I still am like the most productive I've ever been as well. So I think that once we do take care of ourselves and start like aligning that, it's so much easier to focus. It's so much easier to prioritize what we can and can't do. It's so much easier to just keep up on things. That's what I was really afraid of at first, right? Well, if I take all this time to like take care of me, like who's going to take care of the house? Who's going to take care of the family? Like, how am I going to have enough time to do my business and to work? Miraculously, there's enough time. It seems like there's even more time than there was before, even with the extra time set aside on myself.
One of the things that I kind of want to bring up, because we are doing this loving yourself through the holidays, right? And, Becca's bringing up self-sacrifice, things like that. One of the things that I'm seeing is there's been a lot of economic turmoil, right? They're saying get your Christmas shopping now. We're seeing rising food costs. Financially, we're getting hit, right?
Yeah.
And another thing that we tend to do is we believe like the holidays are coming up. We need to spend all this money on people, right? Because we're obliged to buy them these gifts and things. So do I not pay the electric bill, right? And go buy presents at 3 times what their, original price was. That's another thing of self-sacrifice also, is like if you're looking at things just from like a home level or, financial level, is would it be better to maybe just like hang out with your family and not, invest all that money into presents and gifts? We don't have to self-sacrifice. We don't have to go without everything so that way somebody can get a present, or we can just gift them with our time, right? Which is actually a form of self-care.
So I've been doing that for the last couple of years for most of my family. All of the kids, like we have a big, very loving family. The kids are not in need of anything, and they have like every toy they could imagine. But I started giving away like experiences instead. Or I would have each of my nieces and nephew over for an afternoon together, and we would like do a project or paint something together, or go get pedicures, or do pedicures for each other, for the little girls. And I'll tell you, they love that way more than spending the money on the gifts. Even if I just have them for a couple hours one afternoon, and it's getting to be a lot because there's like 12 of them now, but they love that way more. And I think if we started making that a priority with our family and our friends over the gifts, we'd see a lot more connection.
So we have a comment here that we can receive love from others when you don't love yourself. It's also backwards because we are all humans who deserve to be loved. I'm really not sure what the comment's actually talking about, but
I know
mean,
where
yeah, we
that's
can.
from.
Okay.
Because you said you can't really receive love if you don't love yourself. And I do, so I think you can, okay? But you're not going to open yourself up to receive it as much. And so I think what she's saying is like others can still love you even if you don't love yourself. And I think that's maybe where we got off on that. You just aren't as likely to allow it in my opinion. You're not as likely to receive it, to accept it, to really open up to that if you're feeling that you're not deserving of it. If you're not deserving of your own love, then you're likely to think you aren't of other people's as well.
Yeah, it is hard to receive when you feel that you're not worthy of it.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I didn't mean that you couldn't receive any love. I did mean more of like it's going to be tougher for you. And if the focus is always on, this has just been my experience, if the focus is always on everyone else, it's harder to receive the love because your focus is still outward for everyone else first. And, maybe follow-up questions to just consider is like, is it, have you ever had a hard time in your life receiving a compliment? Have you ever had a hard time receiving gifts? Have you ever had a hard time letting someone else do something for you? And, if it's no to all of those, then you're probably in a much better place of receiving love. So yeah, thank you for the clarification. I don't mean that you can't receive any, but I do think it's tougher. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see what she wrote again here, but yeah, I think everybody is deserving of love. Absolutely. Whether or not they love themselves. That's definitely not what we were getting at.
Yeah.
Another one, I just thought this was something that just to kind of reiterate is somebody said, I think the biggest sacrifice is always time and attention.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and I just will piggyback off of what Shayla said about having enough time, because I was in this boat as well of, working, homeschooling, always putting everyone else, first, and not really having like daily time to myself. In fact, I can remember I think it was about 4 years ago, I was getting my hair done, and I've dealt with thinning hair issues, right? And my hairstylist said, every day in the shower, I want you to take like 5 to 10 minutes and massage your scalp, like part of your self-care routine. Well, I didn't have a self-care routine. So I don't have time for that. She's like, you don't have 5 minutes for yourself? And I'm like, no, I don't. Like, that was literally how I felt in that moment, was that I couldn't stop and spend 5 minutes on myself because I had all of these other things that I put before me. And so, when I first started my self-care process, I started with 10 minutes a day. And that was hard for me, like to really, truly, like 10 minutes uninterrupted, nobody come talk to me, nobody get anything from me. I'm not looking at my phone. It was really like, I had anxiety over it. So I'm seems counterproductive, right? And I'm just throwing this out there for people that don't have this as a part of their daily routine. Is the best place to start. But to piggyback off of what Shayla said is that, when I made those 10 minutes and I committed to them and I made it happen, what happened was the universe made the time for me. And so all of a sudden I became more productive. And on top of, and I think the reason is because I started getting more in the moment and I started really caring about myself. So I brought a better Becca to the table. And when I brought a better Becca to the table, I just was naturally more productive. I was more caring, even though I was doing less for people. I actually felt like I was my heart more to the table. And then all of a sudden it turned into 30 minutes and then an hour. And now it's like minimum, I get an hour to myself before I go engage with the world, or I'm not really that pleasant to be around. It's, you know, I've just learned about myself that I'm going to be a lot happier and you're going to be happier too, because you have to deal with me. Right. And so, but it's amazing how the universe does kind of go like, oh, you care about yourself and you're investing in this time. It somehow makes the time available for you and you still get everything done. And then you can kind of build, like I said, on the 10 minutes to 20 minutes, 30 minutes to an hour, but start with something small like 10 minutes if you don't
And you
have
don't have to feel guilty. I think that's what gives us a lot of the anxiety, is feeling guilty, or like that it will offend our partner or our kids if we're like, I need you to leave me alone for 10 minutes. But actually, I've seen it in practice. I don't have children myself, but I've even used it with my nieces and nephews. So when they're here, they're a lot. There's just a lot and a lot. I'm like the favorite aunt, so there's like a lot of everybody wants to be all around me all at the same time. And they respond super well when I'm like, actually, like Aunt Shayla just needs 5 minutes with nobody saying her name. Okay. Like, I'm going to set a timer. When it goes off, that's great. You can come at me again. And they're like, okay. And then they just like, okay, cool. See you in 5 minutes. Like, and it's fine. And that also teaches them to do the same thing, that they're allowed to ask for a break respectfully, instead of teaching them that we have to take it and take it and take it until we're overwhelmed and then snap with people, or yell or get frustrated or whatever. So most people are actually really receptive and open to it, unless they have their own issues to deal with around that.
If you communicate the boundary up front of this is what I'm doing and this is why, if they don't respect that, then there's probably, they have their own issues and there's something else going on in the relationship, right? Like that's like a whole other discussion, but communicating the boundary up front. And I will just piggyback off of that, because doing this with my kids was a challenge in the beginning. They would slip notes under the bathroom door. So I would go into the bathroom for my niece, so they'd be like slipping me notes under the door. But recently I have a 9-year-old son who's very like black and white, like the world needs to fit in a box. So we're working through that. But one of the things he does for himself sometimes is like makes a schedule. And I caught him actually putting on his schedule me time.
Oh, that's great.
9-year-old boy. So when I saw that, I thought that was selfish. I'm like, look what I'm teaching him. Like, that is so cool. But in the beginning, it was very like, this feels selfish and like I should be, feeling guilty and
So just out of curiosity, did you give yourself an atta girl? Like a physical, like, good job, good mama?
I didn't give myself an atta girl. Yeah. It was like one of those moments where like my heart melted and I was like, that is amazing. Like, I didn't ask him to do that. That was just something he did on his own. And he really is a kid who, he's got a very, very busy schedule too, but he is a kid who needs like the downtime. Like he really do. Will every single day he has like reading time by himself, quiet. He sits with his cat every night, before he goes to bed. And, if he doesn't get that time, he does get more like, because he's got to like decompress from the day and like, it's just cool.
So before we go any further, I kind of wanted to go back to when we were talking about setting like 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, right? What would you ladies recommend for people to do? Let's say you have somebody who has never done any self-care. This is the first time they are looking at their self-care. It can be really overwhelming, right? We think we have to tackle the hardest thing first. So if you're taking 10 minutes or 5 minutes a day, what are some simple things that anybody can do without feeling overwhelmed that you would recommend to another person who, like I said, who's never looked at self-care? This is brand new to them. What is something that they could do for 10 minutes a day?
I started like doing coloring. I know you do it on your phone, but like I actually like coloring, and that creativity outlet also helps in a lot of other ways. Okay. There's a lot of things that break our creativity. We've talked about baths, or spend 10 extra minutes in the shower if you feel extra relaxed there. Cool. Um, I would highly recommend not using that time to be on your phone or watching TV. That definitely puts you in a different area. You're not being mindful in the moment. So that's more like killing time, and you're just kind of losing those minutes instead. Meditation for people, it doesn't have to be sit down and clear your mind. You can literally zone out watching a fire, watching smoke curl, watch the clouds go by, something where you can allow your mind that like white noise time. Do you have any additional ones, Becca?
Yeah, coloring was going to be my first one. That's a good start with. I think, yeah, you could even go on Pinterest and search self-care ideas. There's like a million different things you could do. What I usually ask someone if I'm working with them, like as a client, and they've never done self-care before, my question is usually, if you had like unlimited time, what is something you love to do? Like something that you don't seem to get into your schedule, but you love it. I've had one person tell me like playing an instrument. They absolutely love playing an instrument, and it would be, like tucked away in their closet, and they haven't touched it in 6 months or 5 years or whatever it is. My husband does, he shoots a bow, an arrow. It's like a form of meditation for him. It gets him out of his head. He's focused on the target. So what is it that really, like, if you had unlimited time that you could do anything and it doesn't involve a device, no TV, no internet, no, like, what would you do? Because everybody has some, I love going hiking and like just going for a walk outside, watching the trees, the tree leaves in the wind. It's like so simple, but everybody has something. I think if you don't, then, search self-care ideas and see what jumps out at you and try them. Some of them you'll try and be like, I don't really enjoy that. And some of them you'll try and you'll be like, oh, wow, I had no idea. I started painting this last year. I had no idea that I on paint. Like, who knew?
Yeah, I've been doing like the paint by numbers stuff too, and I really love that.
Yeah.
I don't love the setup time and the cleanup, so it's not a 5-minute project.
But this was one of the things that I wanted to bring up today, because I remember when I was first approached with self-care, like I'm an all or nothing kind of girl. So I'm like, I have to go after the deepest, like the hardest thing. And then I was just continuing to fail, right? Or I couldn't get where I wanted to, but and just slowly starting to build up to those more challenging pieces of our self-care, but starting out with like, I would love to just paint for 10 minutes, or even just kind of zone out, or even just take a nap.
Yeah. Or like pet your cat, or like play with your dog for 10 minutes. Whatever brings you happiness or peace, or again, whatever your main goal is, just give your heart like a little bit of happy, and your inner child, give them 10 minutes to play with whatever they want to do.
Love it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
along self-care, I think we should touch on what we're putting in our bodies just a tad.
Yeah. Really is like, I went through this last week. So I'm doing a class, and one of the things I said in the class is like, okay, so, if you're feeding your body junk, like nothing but junk, what message does that send to your body? It's this living being. It's a vehicle for you to navigate in this life. And you can either feed it to thrive, or you can feed it and it can be fatigued, right? But like whatever you're feeding it is kind of a representation of your relationship with yourself too. And confession time, I will say, as I'm giving this spiel, I'm like, I keep having this like, gotta quit coffee, like, you ladies know this. I'm like, I think I'm supposed to quit coffee, and I really don't want to. I'm very resistant to it. And so when I said that, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm starting every morning with this cup of, really,
Not
I don't
great.
poison because I love it so much. But it's really not good for you. It's automatically like, it's not a good way to start your day. And it's acidic to the body, right? So I mean, when I share this, I'm not saying go quit coffee. I'm just saying, like, we all have things that we're putting in our body that maybe are sending a mix to our body, and start with one thing. Just like you only start with 10 minutes. Like, don't start with changing your entire diet in one day. But is there one thing that you could give up in the next week to say, you know what, body, I know this isn't this isn't serving you well. What is that one thing? It's not serving you well, or maybe you need to add in something like water.
And what's fascinating is we wouldn't have an issue doing this for other people. Or like I used the example of, if you knew this was going to cause cancer in your kids, like, would you give it to them? Well, but they really like it. So like, I know it's going to make them sick, or I know whatever, but like, it's fine. They like it right now. Like, no, you probably wouldn't. So why are we doing that to ourselves?
Yeah.
And that's another thing where we don't have to be all in, right?
Mm-mm.
Simple steps, simple. I'm a huge fan. I know these ladies are too, of goal setting. So setting down and saying, okay, this next week, I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to color, right? Then the next week, like, I'm going to eat like a salad a day. And then the next week, maybe we start doing affirmations every day, or, and just slowly just building up on these goals or, on these small, very easy to attain goals, and training our bodies to start caring for ourselves. And, I look at this, like, we have a question on here about like self-love. I think self-love is a little bit different than self-care. And I don't think you can achieve self-love until you work on self-care. I don't know about you ladies, but that's kind of how I look at it, is the love comes from caring for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
see
there's
it.
a reason we did this time of year. I just want to make that side note real quick. This is the holidays, right? So how many people, we get to Halloween and they've been working hard all year and they just fall right off the wagon, right? Like, well, whatever, it's the holidays. I'll get back on track on New Year's. But then if your goal is losing weight, you're 10 pounds behind. If your goal is to be changing your diet, now you have 3 months, like a quarter of a year of like doing exactly opposite. So this is one thing I found really fascinating. At this point in time, we have 61 days left of the year. Okay. So yesterday was Halloween. Okay. So we had 62 days left. And we had Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas, New Year's. We have 5 actual holidays. Okay. 5 days. I'm not saying go to Thanksgiving and don't enjoy your Thanksgiving dinner. Like, go there and chow down, but let it just be on Thanksgiving. That's one day. We're giving up a quarter of our year for 5 days. So again, that's just balance and perspective, just knowing like, no, I'm not going to not allow myself to enjoy the holidays, but I'm not going to say, oh, it's Christmas, so I'll just have candy and cookies every single day.
Well, and let's talk about the holidays, right? So what's a big holiday for most people? New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, I'm gonna change everything, right? And then we, last like a week because we
No,
set
New
way
Year's
too
Eve,
many.
I'm going to go get drunk and party. And then New Year's Day miraculously changed everything.
Yeah, and all of a sudden New Year's Day, we're okay, I'm gonna do everything perfect. I'm gonna give up everything. I'm gonna add in all the good stuff. And then we overwhelm ourselves, and we literally have set us up for failure. Whereas what we're doing is saying, like, starting now and working on those little self-care things. So when New Year's comes and you choose to have that resolution of, I'm going to be the best person, or I'm going to be, whatever it is, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to, whatever your resolution is, which by the way, I'm not a resolution person, or like a New Year's resolution person.
Yeah,
But
no, I'm just an all year round when things come up person.
yeah, but then, so if you start now, then we're going to give you the tools that you need. So when New Year's hits, you can really move forward in 2022 with your best self.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, pick like one thing a week. And then by the end of the year, you've got like 8 really good habits in place. And, then you just build on that and it just keeps getting better and better. There was a quote, I don't remember who said this, but it was one of my favorites of like, if you aimed every day to just be 1% better, just 1% better every single day, in 1 year, you would be
350% better.
Right.
Like,
and so if we just aimed for that, instead of the huge dramatic change overnight where we set ourselves up for failure and then we're beating it's just a vicious cycle that's really easy to get caught in. So one thing a week, just one.
Beautiful.
And it doesn't have to be big. And give
Yeah.
yourself the win. Oh my gosh, if you wake up and don't have coffee one day, like, hello, that's amazing. Yeah, be like, I'm the best. Like, look at me resisting temptation. Like, I woke up and drank tea this morning and I'm amazing. Okay, that's okay. And
then
you
the
might not
next
have a lot
day,
of friends that are on board with that, but you call us up, we'll help you out. Okay, we'll cheer you on and tell you you're doing amazing.
but then the next day, if you do drink the coffee, right? Don't
It's
be
okay.
like, oh, I'm giving up. Everything is horrible. You just say, okay, I'm human, right? I had a moment. So what can I do now moving forward?
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot in a lot of our classes, but the guilt and the shame of beating yourself up after you've done something you're not proud of is sometimes worse than what you've done or what you've eaten or the workout you skipped or, whatever that may be. Just accept it and move on. Like if your friend snapped at you one day and they were a little rude and then they came back and they're like, hey, I'm really sorry, I was just having a bad day. Like, how quickly do you forgive them? So fast. Like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. I understand you're under a lot of stress. Cool. Okay. Again, if we could love ourselves that same way, it makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah. Self-compassion, self-forgiveness. Yeah. Beating yourself up is just like a waste of the energy.
It is.
Yeah, it doesn't serve your highest good, period.
No.
Definitely no.
So ladies, we're coming into almost an hour here. Is there anything that you guys want to leave everyone with?
I don't think so. I think just the incremental changes and just being cognizant of the way that you're talking to yourself. I think that's a huge, huge place to start. And if you're concerned with time, that takes 0 time. Okay. Because you're already talking to yourself. You're already talking to yourself all day, every day. And you're already saying things. If you can just be conscientious of that and then flip that into good things, I'll make a huge change with literally no time commitment. And I'm sorry, my dog is making so many weird noises. So I'm sorry if you guys can hear that.
The only thing I would add, because we've we've covered a lot, do one thing, like just one thing, 10 minutes a day to yourself would be awesome. The last thing I will just add on to the self-talk is, obviously got to monitor it first. But when you first start monitoring it, really, it can be easy to fall into that like self-condemning yourself, right? Or that guilt, that shame, whatever it is. So the one tip I would give people is that as you're starting to like become self-aware of the self-talk, is take it and flip it around. So if I'm, calling myself an idiot, then turning that positive of I'm not actually an idiot. This is the first time I've ever done this, or I just need to practice this more, or it's not my fault that technology is not working, or you know what I mean? Like turning it around and somehow making it like a positive, you end on a positive note and you feed that to your mind and your brain and don't just leave it with the like, oh, I can't believe I just said that to myself. Take it, how do I make this, how do I turn this into a positive? And if it's something where maybe you made a mistake and we all make mistakes, right? That could be something like, oh, I just made a mistake. We all make mistakes. It's okay. Like carry on,
And what am I learning from this?
What am I this again with the questions, right? Like, what are you asking yourself? So I just wanted to add that, but thank you so much for doing this. This is great.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, ladies. Honestly, if I didn't have you in my life, I'd probably be a hot mess.
Same.
There's a lot of knowledge from, like all 3 of us have done a lot of work. a lot of, working on ourselves and trying to heal. And so, I'm very blessed that we were able to share our knowledge with all of you. And yeah, I mean, so our next class is going to be,
And I was
um,
anybody watching too, like drop a comment if you have something else to add or share. Like we're barely scratching the surface. So like, what have you learned about loving yourself? Like,
Where were your struggles, and or where'd you start out? Do you have some other good ideas for starting out for people?
yes.
yes.
Okay,
So
next class is?
yeah, our next class is going to be Monday, November 15th at noon Mountain Standard Time. And it's going to be, I know we kind of delved in a little bit today on this, but self-discipline and boundaries.
Yeah,
And I know Becca keeps us up to date with the different seasons that we're in, and I believe we are in boundary season.
we are. That's
So
apparently my whole life. So
it's always good to upgrade boundaries, or sometimes you have to downgrade them because sometimes they're walls that don't need to be up. But when you do it in boundary season, then you just have the energies working in your favor. It can be more impactful.
yeah,
Shayla is a rising Scorpio.
yes, I am.
We just got asked if Shayla was a Scorpio. So she's a rising. One of my kids is.
But yeah, so we would love any insights on like tips that you guys have done. Also, I'm just so thankful that we were all able to get together and talk about just self-care and getting this out there. Please share this video with anyone that you think could really use some help in these areas. I know that we're going to try and have this, all of these classes in as many sources or like online sources, so you have many places to share this to, or, to view this from. So thank you all.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank
so
you so
grateful.
much.
Thank you. We'll see everybody on the 15th.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Have a beautiful day.
You too.
Bye.